Hello, I am Shieldwall 100, and in the words of Garth Marenghi, welcome back, weary traveller. And we're back in the streets of Gotham City for another Batman Miniatures Game 3rd edition game report. Today I've got two lovely looking crews for you, not just because I've painted them, but mostly because these are two of the most aesthetically striking crews in the game at the moment. I'm up against some pretty stiff competition, but we've got Two-Face and his awesome, lovely new crew of 30s era gangsters versus the Birds of Prey in their incarnations Poison Ivy and the Gotham City Sirens, all of whom are in their 3rd edition casts now, and I'm very happy with them and looking forward to seeing how the two objective decks play off against each other as well. It's going to be a very interesting game, I hope, and we're going to see what happens. Yes, please see the description below for a link to the Top Hatted Hamster game store where you can get 10% off your first or next purchase. I'm not affiliated with them, have to say that. Well, I don't have to, but I want to say that because I'm not, and it's the truth. But I was given the code to pass on and I felt I should do so. Okay, let's get on and I'll show you who's in which crew. Well, the Two-Face crew is very familiar looking indeed if you've been following my videos. This is actually the same Two-Face crew layout, shall I say, that was used against Joker not so long ago, which in turn was pretty similar to the one I used against Batman. But yes, I just want to get used to using these models, and I really like them, especially Two-Face himself and his two sidekicks. They're just outstanding sculpts, and I'm really happy with the way they turned out. The gangsters themselves, no slouches when it comes to aesthetics, and yeah, they're pretty tough. You can go to town on taking like more generic henchmen if you want, or even some of the funky named ones like Killer Moth or whatever, but no, I wanted to use I wanted to maintain the aesthetic of 1930s gangsters, and also it gives you more of those what they call blood money tokens to use throughout the course of the game. This gang is very shooty. Every single model has a firearm of one sort or another, but that's sort of countered by the fact that many of them can only fire once every other turn, because, you know, to balance things out, and also it's all to do with how the objective decks play out into them as well. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how this works out, and we'll move on to the Birds of Prey crew now. And likewise, the Gotham City Sirens represented in a very familiar format. It's actually the identical crew to that which I took against the Joker a few games ago, actually. Mainly because there's not a huge variety of models, and also the models they've got are just so damn good. The only difference is that the Catwoman model has been substituted in for the newest version, and why not? It's a lovely new model. It's a new model which I've just painted, so it's definitely going in, and it gets to make use of those really interesting cat markers, and yeah, that should be really interesting to see. But as you can see, we've got Frank and the rest of the plants represented. They'll be popping onto the board throughout the course of the game, I hope. Poison Ivy herself as leader. She's solid, and very interesting sort of twist on the leader role, I think. Harley Quinn, of course, because it's a Gotham City Sirens crew, and she's just too useful to not take. That's why she's in so many of my games, in various, like, you know, regardless of which crew she's in. And of course, Kite Man at the back for reasons of hell yeah. Okay, let's get on and see who's going to deploy where. Oh, one more thing. Kite Man is holding the lion's share of the equipment for this crew in purchasable war gear, but I really don't know if that's going to make much difference in the long haul, but we'll see. Okay, I'll go into it if it happens. Okay, I've set out the models and Poison Ivy's preliminary suspect markers now, and I'll show you where everyone is. We'll start off with the Two-Face crew because they're nice and simple. Just so you know, the card drawn for deployment was Vanguard. There, nice and simple, 12 inches, deployment zone diagonals, simple dimples, and one model out up to 4 inches outside of the deployment zone. So here we go. Two-Face's crew in this corner over here. As you can see there, we put Wallace with his Winchester action rifle on top of the Two-Face mobile, which I it arrived just as I finished the last take in the post, so I thought I'd put it straight out onto the board. There it is. I like it. Not bad. Nice one, eBay. So yes, I moved around one of the other cars just to make room for it. Nice. And yes, so moving on to Poison Ivy's crew. You can see the ladies are all in the park here. Catwoman, Ivy herself, and Harley Quinn. And yes, Kite Man has snuck forward as the one model outside the deployment zone. He's gone forwards a bit. The suspect markers for Ivy are here, over here, and a couple further forwards. There and so. Okay, that's that. Oh yes, one more thing. In terms of which side of the coin Two-Face is playing with, to start with, he's going for the good side for the purposes of his objective deck. They just seem to be the ones which are more conducive to early scoring than the twisted side. So yeah, that's basically that. Okay, I'm going to move on to turn number 1 now, and we'll get the action started. Okay, the take the lead and raise plan phases are both now complete for turn number 1. Nice and simple. In terms of the first phase, in terms of cards played, Eerie 2 came out for the Birds of Prey, so focus in. 3 victory points there. Okay, so it's a bit of wordy. We have had it before though. It basically boils down to the tallest piece of scenery on the board, which is this brownstone building here with the water tower on top of it. I'm counting the whole building, incidentally. The Two-Face crew put down this the event marker, as you can see there, next to the suspect. At the end of the turn, the Birds of Prey have to have more models within 4 inches of that, or within 4 inches of that event marker and on this piece of scenery in order to score this card for 3 points. And it certainly does favour them at the moment with suspect markers and Kite Man there. So yeah, it's looking good, although there is a sewer marker, so who knows what could happen. In terms of the initiative, with Poison Ivy in blue, you can see that she has the initiative for this turn, so she'll be moving first. For Audacity tokens, the Two-Face crew put one on Two-Face himself, as you can see, 1 each for the 2 lady sidekicks, and 1 for Wallace there at the front. We've got, it's an easy choice for the Birds of Prey, or Poison Ivy, because it's 1 for each of the models on the board, so Kite Man and the 3 girls at the back. I could have given Audacity to the plants, but as was pointed out to me in a previous game, there's really no point. The plants can't really do anything once they emerge anyway, except for make their 1 attack action, really. So yeah, there's really not much point giving them Audacity at all. But you know, so right, let's get on with this and see how the turn's actions begin. So with a gust of wind and a cry of hell yeah, Kite Man activated first to kick off the game's proceedings. He has a grapple gun as purchased from Purchasable War Gear, because that's where most of the funding has to go for this crew. And yes, he used it this turn. He has his kite ability, which picks up the pace as more suspect markers come across his path of movement. So he was able to, all in all, ignoring terrain, don't forget, for the grapple gun for this turn, he was able to move all the way from down here next to his Audacity marker up to the top of this brownstone, and he put down a suspect marker himself for fun, I guess. And yes, that concludes his turn. He's starting to fulfill the criteria for Eerie 2, as we saw before. And yes, plants can actually manifest in another player's turn, in another model's turn. That's how they're supposed to do it. So I did make that mistake in the last Ivy game I did. In doing so, you see down here there's a plant. There was a suspect marker down here, if you remember, for the Birds of Prey. They picked up that suspect marker and put down this plant in contact with it, and it's now fulfilling the criteria for Eerie 2 as well. So yes, interesting first activation for the Birds of Prey. Let's move on and see what the Two-Face crew are going to do with their first activation. Okay, a nice easy turn for Luigi here. He moved up from his place next to Two-Face. He was inspired and he used that to reveal the Birds of Prey suspect marker, which was in the middle of the road. He didn't quite fancy that erupting into a plant and causing problems as the Two-Face crew deployed. Having done that, a objective card came out of the hand. Not so much Sugar, which is Sugar, the Flapper Girl's tailored objective, her unique one. So yes, a lot of text there. Lots of text. Okay, basically an event marker is placed within 4 inches of an enemy model. There's this one over here, which is within 4 inches of the plant. Okay, there's a countdown of 6 on it because I rolled a 6. That will go down at the end of each subsequent model's activation after this one, so it won't last too long. At that point, there need to be, I'll be rolling some dice, and if a double comes up, the Two-Face crew will score. They'll get more dice if there are more of their models that can be relocated over there by the time that happened, by the time that countdown reaches 0. That's basically it. If they do, they manage to score 3 points. It's a nice one to get out, and it's helped cycle the deck. It's maybe a little bit early for it to get its true worth, but hey, if it fails to score this turn, it might come up again later on. So, okay, better to play it than to not, in my opinion. So, okay, right, that concludes Luigi's activation. He had to take Enervating 2, you can see there, to make up that much ground, but I think he'll find it's worth it. We'll see. The first of the actual Gotham City Sirens to activate, Catwoman leapt into action. She moved out from the park here around into behind the truck. She has Audacity. She used that to put down a suspect marker. Now, as you may know, this version of Catwoman, now instead of putting down normal suspect markers, they're also cat markers. Yeah, and yes, they're fun. And yes, so she puts them down. This counts as a special sort of suspect marker, which ties into some of Catwoman's own special rules. She played I Work Best Alone from the hand as well, I forgot to say. It's 2 points. We saw it in the last game involving Birds of Prey. Basically, every one of Catwoman's placed suspect markers, so the cat marker in this place, she puts down a numerical counter on it. At the end of the turn, I roll a die. If it matches any of the numerical values on any of her suspect markers, she'll score it, and it just stays in play for the remainder of the game. So as she carries on putting down suspect markers, or cat markers as they're likely to be, she may well pick up some points for that. So yeah, not bad at all. Yes, having done that, she used her special action to move up to 2 cat markers. There's only one on the board, so she's put one down and moved it forwards a little bit. Don't forget, these are still considered Birds of Prey suspect markers, so that plants can manifest from them. And on that subject, one of the pre-existing suspect markers has been turned into the venom or spitting plant, I think it is. I can't remember which one it is. Yes, this is the ranged attack one though, and it erupts out of the ground to remind the Two-Face that they are very much in a fight. Okay, so yes, so that suspect marker over there no longer exists, but a plant now does in its stead. Okay, let's carry on and move back to Two-Face. The Two-Face crew responded with Malone, the gangster, moving up. He didn't have to take any innovating to get that little speed boost to move here. He's well within his normal move. He moved up, put down a suspect marker because he was inspired by Two-Face's presence at the beginning of his move. That does more or less conclude his turn. A bit of a cagey opening for the Two-Face crew. No cards played as yet for them during the course of their activations. Ivy activated herself, and she moved up and placed a suspect marker. So she moved from here over to here next to the sewer grating, and she used her abilities to put down a suspect marker over here within the control zone of this plant, which is a really, really handy thing to be able to do. She didn't use any of her amazing special actions this turn, unfortunately. She's just a little bit too far away to be doing that, either with her own plants or with enemy models, but we have high hopes for future turns. Having placed this suspect marker, she was able to put down In Position as an objective from her hand. 2 points. It's the first card to confirm score though. As you can see, it's the top bit we're looking at. The friendly model places a suspect within 4 inches of an enemy model, and you already have at least 3 friendly suspect markers in play. And yes, they do. They've got the one up here with Kite Man, one down in the middle of the road, and the cat marker. Don't forget, that's also a suspect. So yes, when this suspect marker was put down, they were able to score this for a lovely 2 points, just to get the ball rolling. Okay, that concludes Poison Ivy's turn. For the purposes of this turn, I've removed the bus shelter, as is my omnipotent godlike powers, and I've activated Wallace. He was on top of the Two-Face mobile where his Audacity counter was. He actually took Innovating 3 to run all the way down here. Really useful ability that, although it does tend to linger with the with the crew sometimes. So one day I'll get caught out by that. Before he moved, he used his Let's Go ability, or Follow Me, ability, to give Malone an extra 4-inch movement counter. That'll help him out in the future, I'm sure. Then he moved down, having used his special action to do that, down to here. He used his bonus manipulate action for being inspired to put down a suspect marker, which enabled him to play To Make This Better from the hand as an objective for 2 points. Good side, as we've seen before. Place a friendly suspect within 4 inches of an enemy model, and have at least one other friendly suspect within 4 inches of a different enemy model. Well, This one's being put down next to this plant, and there is another one here. Ah, yes, of course. So yes, there you go. Could have shot the plant, turned it into sticky sap more like, but really wanted to score that card, so opted not to. Will they regret it? Well, there's plenty of other models around in the Two-Face crew that can possibly deal with a plant. Anyway, let's move on. So yes, this, as you can see, this event marker's now moved down to 2 activations left, so not too long before that one goes off, and we'll see what happens then. But let's move back to the Birds of Prey crew. Mutated Plant 2 activated next for the Birds of Prey, and yes, used its venomous spit to attack Luigi, rolled all the dice including the strength die, and had a very good roll in fact. Managed to hit with every single die roll and got a 6 on the strength die to knock down the gangster, and yes, so critical hit to knock him down, and 4 points of blood, 4 points of stun. Luigi is hardened, which meant he could trade in one of these for the other type, so he could have taken 5 stun or 5 points of normal blood damage, but yeah, he opted not to because neither one seemed pretty good. He could either have gone unconscious by taking more stun damage or been brought closer to death by taking more endurance damage, so yeah, neither of them. 4 and 4 is just going to have to be the way he goes. It's not good either way, but I guess that's a lot of venomous spit he's just been covered in. At that point of activation, Frank erupted from the ground with the recently placed suspect marker. So yes, Frank is now on the board. He is a gorgeous model. Pretty much the reason I decided to get Poison Ivy, apart from the fact that I just wanted to do all the crews anyway. Right, okay, no cards scored for Birds of Prey in that activation, but let's move on now. Continuing the theme of Two-Face activating all of his gangsters before he commits himself, Tommy had to go next. He doesn't have audacity, but he was inspired by the presence of the Duke of Duality there. And yes, he took 1 point of innovating to be able to climb on top of this, the hostess truck. And yes, he put down a suspect marker. That concluded his activations. However, what was it? Oh yes, next thing that happened was from his hand he used a objective card to play 2 faces of the coin. It's a card he plays now, but we'll see if it scores for them in the recount phase at the end of the turn. Two-Face will just have to have an even number of suspects in play in order to score that one. It's kind of laying down a challenge, but also in this turn the countdown managed to tick down to 0 on the card for Sugar's card, not too much sugar. So what we do now is place an event marker. Yes, done that. Roll a die for each roll a die for each friendly or enemy model within within 4 inches. Sorry, it's 2 dice plus 1 for the fact that Wallace is there, minus 1 for the fact that the plant is there. Sorry, I'm butchering this card's description. 2 dice were rolled. They were not equal to each other, so that would normally not score. However, as a resource from the Two-Face hand, Time Bomb came out, and if you see that for 1 point, immediately after making a die roll, change the result of one of the dice to match another die in the same roll. So that was duly made into a double, which fulfilled the criteria of the card instantaneously, regardless of whether they rolled a double or not. So not so much sugar, scores for 3 points for Two-Face. Very handy. Bit wordy there, apologies for that, but I believe that's the way I played it, and that's that. Yes, Tommy's now on top of the truck, and it's time for the Birds of Prey to make what they can of the remainder of the turn. Frank, Poison Ivy's housemate come pot plant, activated next, and he attacked. He has 1 action. He doesn't have audacity, but he only has 1 action anyway. He used it to attack Luigi here, who was knocked down. Unfortunately, Luigi fell. Well, every hit got him, and he can't defend himself whilst knocked down. So he took 4 more points of blood, and which will kill him off in a most gruesome manner that you can possibly imagine, being eaten by a giant pot plant. Dirty job came out of the hand, for the Birds of Prey to score that lovely little 1 point. It's good to get those points when you're killing enemy models, to be honest, because sometimes the game makes you choose one or the other. So even though it's only 1 point, it's a chance to actually do it whilst you're taking something out of the opposing crew as well. So I think that's why it's only 1 point. But yeah, so 1 point because he was made a casualty, a bit of score, and the dirtiest job as you can imagine, having to eat your opponent. Okay, well that concludes Frank's activation. Back to Two-Face. Having scored her victory point card earlier in the turn, Sugar decided to actually have an activation now. She moved up forwards and used her tactical action to shoot her small derringer at Frank. One of the dice hit after her movement penalty was applied and did 2 points of blood damage to the plant. Having done that, she actually played a resource heads or heads from the hand. As you can see, the good side is being used, so it basically means that having done the shooting attack, the suspect marker is placed in contact with Frank for future use. Okay, so that concludes Sugar's activation. Okay, Harley Quinn up next, and before she activated, the Birds of Prey crew noticed that they actually fulfilled the criteria to put in position here down to its lower. It's easier to score version. Basically, an opponent has more suspects in play than you. See that in bold? That certainly was the case at the beginning of their activation, which means they can now score this card if a friendly model now places a suspect within 4 inches of an enemy model, which we'll all agree is easier to do than that top bit there. So yes, they just had to put, so what this card is now face up on the sort of on standby, shall we say. It helps them cycle the deck a bit more, which is really useful, and yeah, it means it's easy to score those 2 points later on in the course of the game. Right, having done that, if you remember, Harley definitely had audacity. She used it to somersault forwards out of the park here and put down a suspect marker of her own. She was a little bit too far away to do anything else, but as a objective card from the hand, her own card came out, Joker-ometer. And yes, so for 3 victory points there, it's a whole bunch of text. Basically, this stays in play for the rest of the game. I'm putting it on Harley herself because it's more fun. Basically, if an active model, if another model within 4 inches of her rolls 2 1s for doing anything at all, attacking, defending, I don't know what, she'll immediately make a move out of sequence and attack that model. And if she damages it, then she scores the points. That's the big print version of that card. Okay, so that concludes Harley Quinn. Let's move back to Two-Face. Following on from Sugar's go last time, Spice then activated. She moved into whipping range of Frank and proceeded with the teamwork bonus she gets from being so close to the other sidekick to give Frank a whipping of his life. 5 points of blood and 5 points of stun, and that is enough to take Frank out of the action for now. He's gone. Unlike the other models that get killed, plants can actually come back though, so Frank might just come back a little bit worse for wear. Okay, but unfortunately no cards scored there, but it does take out a dangerous model from the middle of the Two-Face crew for now. Okay, let's move on and finish off the Birds of Prey crew's go. As a fairly, what should we say, anticlimactic conclusion to the Birds of Prey's activations for turn 1, the first carnivorous plant to come out just picked up the suspect marker underneath the bus shelter. It was within 4 inches, and plants can manipulate within 4 inches. The only manipulation they can do is to pick up suspect markers rather than put them down, but they did that. So yes, that concludes the Birds of Prey's activations for turn number 1. It was a fairly limited turn for Two-Face as well, because he suddenly realised that he still needs an even number of suspect markers in play in order to be able to score one of his objective cards he played in the turn. So he just moved forwards his 8 inches and put down a suspect marker of his own. It did stop him from being able to score, from being able to shoot and anything, but oh well, that's what you need. Points, man, it's all about the points. Okay, that concludes the turn's activations, and yeah, let's move to the recount phase. Okay, the final phase just completed, and as we must see, Airy 2 scores for the Birds of Prey for a lovely 3 victory points for them. I'll pop that down in the score pile. And Two Faces of the Coin also scores, but this time for Two-Face for the even number of suspects that they have in play. So both sides completing their objectives in the final phase there for a few points each. Catwoman did not score her victory point card there for what's it called, for the for rolling the dice, did not come up with a 5, but hey, long-term gameplay, that one. Yeah, that's basically it, I think. No other cards played from the hands, a little bit of deck cycling went on, and yeah, that's that. I think we're ready to go into turn number 2 now, where things are starting to get really interesting. Both sides taking some damage, but in Ivy's case, the plants do come back, so we'll see if attrition starts to take its toll. Right then, well, the Turn 2, take the lead and raise the plan phases are both complete now. In terms of cards played from the hand, the Birds of Prey played Die Hard. That's one we've seen in pretty much all the games so far. 2 victory points if Kite Man is either he's either conscious or on the board. Has to be conscious on the board, and if he does, that's 2 points for the Birds of Prey. It'll be hard to reach him up there, so yes, that should be fairly straightforward for them as long as they don't do anything silly or nothing bad really happens to him. Nothing played from the Two-Face hand in this phase. In terms of audacity markers, you can see one there for Two-Face, Spice, Malone, and Wallace there in the bus shelter. The Birds of Prey, same as last turn, it's all the non-plant members, so Kite Man, Poison Ivy, Catwoman, and Harley Quinn all have audacity. One more thing, oh yes, in this turn I'll show you, it's the Two-Face crew that has the initiative, so yes, moving on, we'll see how they want to kick this possibly pivotal turn off. Kicking things off, we went with Wallace. Okay, from down beneath inside the bus shelter, he used his precise aim ability. He had audacity, so he got to use his special action to do that, and took aim at Poison Ivy with his Winchester. Now, I wasn't sure whether or not to count the front of the bus shelter as cover or not. It's got those little bars. He wasn't right up against it as such, but it's only glass, so I wasn't sure. I flipped a coin, and it came up bad heads, so it did count as cover. I ruled that's the easiest way. I mean, I can't blame anyone for not knowing whether or not that would count as cover. It's not like you can have an exhaustive list of every object in the world, so I just flipped a coin, as is in perfect keeping with the nature of this crew, I think. And yes, it came up bad heads this time, so he did lose a die, so when the other dice all hit, it did mean that only 6 points of damage were done to Ivy as opposed to 9, which would have killed her. But yes, 6 points of damage. She is 1 away from death at this point, I believe, and so that's a pretty nasty wound upon the lady. Unfortunately, I left her too far away from any of her henchman plants to use as bodyguards. Stupid me, must learn. Having done that, he had his movement action left, so he just climbed on top of the bus shelter, if nothing else but to make it easier for me to reach him in future turns and get him definitely out of nibbling range of that plant. Okay, that concludes Wallace's activation. Over to the Birds of Prey. The venomous plant decided it was going to go. It used its solitary action to reveal the suspect marker, which was in contact with Malone there, in order to score the already positioned face up in position. Remember, that's the one where they all had to do was remove a suspect within 4 inches of an enemy model, and so yes, he did that. It does leave the plant rather precariously placed, but 2 points is 2 points, and you need all the ones you can get, so there you go. Okay, let's move on. Harvey Dent activated first for his crew this time, and he decided he was going to have a nice full turn of it. He activated over here and used his special action to use Attorney's Allegation, which will give these two henchmen here, the two gangsters, an extra action this turn. Pretty powerful. He then decided he was going to go Harley Quinn hunting, so he moved on top of this sports car and used his Tommy gun to open fire upon her. He indulged himself of a blood money token as well, I forgot to say, which meant that he didn't lose any dice for doing so. He wasn't hitting altogether super, but he does have the expert marksman rule, I think, so it does make it a bit better for him. So Harley Quinn efforted 3 times to make sure his pool was reduced as much as possible. Nonetheless, the strength die remained as a high caliber weapon, and so 2 points of blood and an extra stun point were put on for 4 stun and 2 blood altogether on Harley Quinn. So yes, that's pretty nasty on her, actually. Okay, that concludes Two-Face's activation. Harley Quinn next, having smarting from that barrage of fire from Two-Face, she vaulted up and over the articulated lorry into mallet range of Malone and Spice, and used her special action to activate 360-degree attack, which meant she attacked both of them instead of just the one, and no efforts were able to be made by either side doing that attack, but she did get 3 hits through on each of them. They both defended fairly well, but she attacked pretty well as well, so yeah, and that mallet is is devastating, so 2 strength dice, which can't be blocked. Doing 3 hits, did 6 stun damage to each of them and pushed them back. Malone not so much, because I put him into the dumpster and he's knocked out anyway. He took hardened wouldn't stop him from being knocked out, so he just went with it. And 6 points of stun damage on Spice is not sufficient to knock her out. She's 1 point off, but she was pushed a fair distance away. Okay, so yes, a good hit there from Harley Quinn. In doing so, she managed to score Pretty Birds from the hand, 2 points. 2 enemy models suffered damage from the same attack by a model they could not see at the beginning of the attacker's activation. So yes, Harley Quinn came out of nowhere to mallet them into like, well, nigh on unconsciousness in one case and unconsciousness in the other. So there you go, 2 points for the Birds of Prey. Sugar, without audacity but still playing the objectives game, she used her solitary action to as a special to order Wallace over here, who's already activated incidentally, to put down a suspect marker. He is in sight because he's within 4 inches of this lamppost. Having done so, the closing argument card came out of the Two-Face crew's hand for 3 points. We've seen this a few times before. Basically, there's a countdown on this suspect marker and this suspect marker. At the end of each subsequent model's activation, those will tick down. If they're both in play, those suspect markers, if both those suspect markers are in play when that counter reaches 0, 3 points for Two-Face. Lovely. Okay, so yes, that concludes Sugar's activation. She did not have audacity. Kite Man activated for the Birds of Prey, and the first thing he did was to reveal the suspect marker up here, which he started next to, and put it down as valuable commodities, which we see a lot. Hurrah, I love this card. 3 points, we've seen it. If this loot counter is still on him at the end of the game. Enough of that, we've seen it all the time. He's moved down here next. He does still ignore terrain, but he only has a 6-inch movement, so because obviously he's very powerful, only if the wind is in the right direction though, so obviously not this turn. Okay, so he's here now, but there's a lot of points riding on him. Okay, Tommy activated. He didn't have audacity, didn't stop him though. He used his one standard action to move from over here into the mix of things. He was inspired by Two-Face, so he put down a suspect marker, which enabled him to score to make this better. We've seen that already this game for 2 points. Place a friendly suspect marker within 4 inches of an enemy model and have at least one other friendly suspect marker within 4 inches of a different enemy model. Well, he put it down within 4 inches of this plant, and Harley Quinn dived into the middle of a bunch of suspect markers earlier, so that's 2 points straight away for Two-Face. He then had his attorney's allegation benefited action. He used that to attack Harley Quinn with his Tommy gun. He used the other blood money marker so that he only had -1 to hit. Harley Quinn did effort twice. That was the maximum she could put in to dodge 2 of the dice rolls, but nonetheless 2 of them got through because actually, sorry, just forgot to say it, as a resource, closing argument was played by Two-Face to oh, he needs to remove that friendly suspect mark. I'll do that in just a second to add an extra attack die in. So yeah, that will go. And yes, it meant that 2 hits got through, including the strength die, sufficient to knock out Harley Quinn, and yes, put her out of the count for a while at least. She's nearly dead actually. She's only 1 point of endurance left. Okay, that concludes Luigi's turn. Scored and hurt some enemy models. Pretty good one. Okay, big turn for Ivy now. She moved from the back of the board back here, and first of all, before she moved, she used her ability to put down suspect markers just here, which was then transformed into a plant instantaneously. She moved forward as far as she could get before using her chlorokinesis power to teleport from anywhere within its action zone, within 4 inches of it, to anywhere else within its action zone. So she ended up over here, okay, behind the sports car. She then still had her special action left, so another special action she can use 2. One to do the chlorokinesis to move, the other one to hypnotize Tommy here. And what he did, he'd already shot his Tommy gun. It has the reload rule, so he can't use it again this turn. So he walked up to his friend Malone and decided just to beat him on the floor while he was down. Put in a couple of points of effort, and yes, managed to do 4 points of blood damage to his knocked out buddy, unfortunately. But yes, so having hypnotized him, Ivy was able to play I'm Feeling weird for 2 points. Easy enough. Inflict an effect on an enemy model. Hypnosis is an effect, so 2 points for the Birds of Prey, and a nice turn altogether. It gets Ivy within range of her bodyguard plants as well, so there we go. Okay, let's see what Two-Face makes of this. Spice activated in what will be the last activation for the Two-Face crew this turn. They've had some knockouts and unfortunate things, which just meant they've run out of models now. Yes, so what's happening is she moved into base contact with Harley Quinn and then proceeded to attack her in close combat with her whip. Did 5 points of stun damage and 5 points of endurance. I've only marked the endurance damage because it's sufficient to kill Harley Quinn for the purposes of this game. Before actually this happened, so I forgot to say, the Twisted Side card came out, so now Two-Face is scoring the other set of cards in his hand, the ones which are more related to damage, and sure enough, having done that 5 points damage, heads came out. Harley Quinn had Audacity, so this counts for her. 2 victory points because at least 4 damage was inflicted on Harley Quinn. So yep, immediate score there for the Two-Face crew upon changing to the Twisted Side, and an enemy model off the board. Okay, let's go to the Birds of Prey. This plant over here activated only has 1 action. It used a special action, however, to play the nest from the hand of the Birds of Prey as a resource. So yeah, the nest for 2 resource points. Spend a special action to remove a KO'd enemy model, not a vehicle, from the game as a casualty. So yes, that will be Mr. Malone here. He is now off the board as a casualty, and that in turn manages to play this card, Dirty Job, from the hand as an objective for 1 point. Again, just an easy one to come out. Yeah, 1 point, make him a casualty. So yes, nice easy score from a plant which wasn't actually going to do anything otherwise. So there you go. Okay, let's move on. I think it's just Catwoman to go now, so we'll see what she gets up to. Okay, a tiny little bit of admin before describing Catwoman's turn. Sorry, forgot to say that these 2 suspect markers for Two-Face counted down their closing argument for 3 victory points. Easy enough. I should have mentioned that a lot earlier, but forgot to. And so 3 points for Two-Face. And also, when Harley Quinn was killed with those 5 points of damage, it was enough to mean that Pretty Birds here went down to its easier to score form. So an enemy model afflicts at least 5 damage markers from your models in a single attack. That was activated, so now it will activate for scoring if an enemy model suffers damage from an attack by a model that could not see the beginning. It could not see at the beginning of the attacker's activation. That basically means that instead of having to do it with 2 enemy models, you only have to hit 1. And so, knowing that, Catwoman rushed around from behind the truck here, which has proven very useful for sneaking attacking actually, and hit Two-Face himself. Both sides put effort in. Harvey Dent got an extra freebie because of his bipolar rule, and Catwoman put the maximum in. But at the end of the day, Harvey Dent failed every single one of his defense rolls, so 3 hits got through, doing 3 points of blood, 3 points of stun on top of the effort damage he's taken. He hasn't taken any other damage, so he's okay so far, but that does mean that this Pretty Birds card does score for 2 points for the Birds of Prey, and that concludes Catwoman's turn, apart from the fact that she used her special action to move this cat marker up a little bit more. Okay, that does actually conclude all this turn's activations. We'll go on to the recount phase next and see if anything else has scored for either team. Okay, well, recount phase completed, and the only card to score is Die Hard from the beginning of the turn, because Kite Man is still alive and floating around up there for 2 points for the Birds of Prey. Nice. No models needed to test for recovery from knockout because they're all either dead or, well, you know, or alive, or just conscious in the first place. Yes, that's it basically. The cat marker didn't score for the 2 points from Catwoman before, but yes, that's basically it, I think. Nothing else really to take note of. I don't think Catwoman could have snuck 2 inches but decided not to, because being in base contact with this guy is probably better for her since he's got a Tommy gun. Yeah, I think that concludes this turn 2. We'll move on to the third turn. Both sides looking pretty beat up, but we'll see where the game goes. Okay, the raise the plan, take the lead phases both merged and easy to recount for you now for turn number 3. No cards played from the hand of either side in either round, in either phase actually, so that's nice and simple. However, for the initiative roll, you can see that Poison Ivy has it this turn, so 4-2 in her favour. So yep, she'll be taking the first activations. In terms of audacity counters, quite easy to say again. On the Birds of Prey side, it's Catwoman, Poison Ivy there, Kite Man, they're the obvious ones. They had a fourth one to allocate, and it was just sort of just randomised it, to be honest, because the plants don't really have an awful lot of use for them. There's a handful of special abilities they have, but nothing that's going to really make a difference here, so gave it to this guy at the front. Okay. On the Two-Face crew side, you've got Two-Face has it, the two ladies, Sugar and Spice, and Wallace at the front has Audacity there. Okay, so they'll be getting full turns, whilst the other models will only have one action each. Okay, let's move on to activations for turn number 3. Well, as we know, the Birds of Prey went first, and Catwoman took the first go. She was originally in combat with Two-Face over here. Whilst she was over here, she used a tactical action. Remember, she had Audacity, of course, to put down another suspect marker, which that's another cat. She put a numerical counter of 4 on it for her objective card that she's got going on. And yes, once that was done, she then used her special action to move the cats around. So they both moved up, and then finally, well, not finally, then next, as an objective, regrowth came out of the hand for Birds of Prey. It's Poison Ivy's signature card. You can only have it in the deck if she's there. It doesn't have to be played on Ivy though. So here we go, and it's a simple, it's an instant score for 3 points. Have at least 3 suspect markers within 4 inches of the active friendly model, and at least one of them is within 4 inches of an enemy model. Okay, so while Catwoman was here on the bonnet of the car, there's 1, 2, 3 Birds of Prey suspect markers within 4 inches of her, and yes, at least, well, the 2 cat markers are easily within 4 inches of Two-Face, so that does indeed score it. So yes, nice easy score. She could have had another swipe at him and possibly even have taken Two-Face out for the count for the turn at least, but scoring points, especially 3-pointers, is really the name of the game today, and yeah, she wanted to. Two-Face is left impotent on the car. She then vaulted over to the behind the hostess truck, and then used her backpack to reveal the Two-Face suspect marker that was next to her on there, because it's a freebie action, and why not? You know, gets to use some annoyance. She's now I know I said I wanted to leave her in combat with Two-Face because of his Tommy gun, but then I remembered it's going to take this whole turn to reload anyway, so well, that's that. So yes, that concludes Catwoman's turn, and yeah, that was a pretty useful one. Sugar activated first for Two-Face this turn. She had Audacity. She used her special action to order Tommy here to put down this suspect marker, and then she used her second and last shot from her small caliber Derringer on Poison Ivy. Hit with every single die, so that would have been 8 points of blood damage on the chlorophyll lady, but yes, Poison Ivy used put one effort in to say protect me to this plant here, who bravely grew up in front of the incoming shot and was destroyed in a sticky, sappy mess. So yeah, that plant's gone. It's one of Ivy's bodyguards down. However, nonetheless, this plant still has an Audacity counter, so heads still was able to be scored by the Two-Face crew for 2 points. Easy enough. A friendly model inflicts at least 4 damage on any model that has an Audacity marker, so still scored. Okay, so yeah. After that, Sugar then moved up into well, a bit closer range there. Okay, that concludes the Two-Face activation for now. Poison Ivy took the next activation. First of all, she attempted to use a special action. Remember, she has Audacity, so she could do this, and special action to hypnotise Tommy, but unfortunately for her this time, he was equal to the challenge. That effort there from her is her trying to make it a bit more potent, but didn't come off for her this time. The next thing she did was to place a suspect marker using her tactical action within 4 inches of this plant here, and as you can see, Frank manifested from it straight away. Then finally, yes, Poison Ivy then used her second special action to use Green Web on Frank, allowing him to attack out of sequence, and as a bonus actually, which he did on Spice here. Yes, which he put in 3 efforts. Spice could only put 2 in because she'd already used a lot of her stun damage up already, and he got 4 hits through altogether, which is pretty damn good. Unfortunately for Spice, that means she is currently being eaten by Frank, so she's off the play area for the second. She needs to pass a strength test, I think it is. I'll double check. It might be an endurance roll or a strength test, one or the other. I'll check it before I do it, in order for her to escape. Otherwise she will be slowly digested by Frank over the remainder of the game. Okay, but for the time being that takes her off the board, so let's clear these counters away. Okay, let's move on. Oh yes, and finally, finally now, Poison Ivy then shuffled forward a little bit just to get herself in range of a few more bodyguard plants. Okay, that continues on. No cards played in that activation. Two-Face activated next for his crew, and he leapt down off the sports car into combat with Frank, and just attacked him with his close combat attacks, and managed to do 4 points of stun. After all was said and done, that's 2 hits, including the strength die. Enough to take Frank out of action. It would KO him, technically, but with plants, you don't worry about whether it's KO'd or actually properly out of action. It always counts as out of action, which means that Frank then coughs up Spice here within 2 inches, which is what I've placed down, and that removes him from the board. After that, as a reaction to this, actually, Kill Them Twice came out of the Two-Face crew's hand for 2 victory points. It's an objective card. Yes, Two-Face killed Frank and then removed the 2 friendly suspect markers within 4 inches. There was one that Tommy just put down and one back here from earlier on. So yes, that scores that for 2 victory points for Two-Face straight off. Yes, I believe that concludes the Two-Face activation for now. A couple of not much of nothing activations next. This plant activated for Birds of Prey and it wasn't actually aim range to do anything, so it was just like a time rundown sort of thing. After that, Wallace activated. He had audacity, so he hopped down off the bus shelter to be in base contact with Ivy. He did actually take a swing at her unarmed, didn't actually result in any damage at all. He whiffed his attacks. He then used his special action to give Follow Me to Tommy, which gives him a +4 movement counter, as we saw at the beginning of the game. So yeah, that'll give Tommy a little boost. Yes, but what crucially it does do is it puts the model in base contact with Ivy for now, so if anyone does move into contact with her, she will count as being outnumbered, which will be bonus to attacks against her, of course. Okay, let's carry on now. It's back to the Birds of Prey's activations. Okay, in a similar vein to the last activation, the Birds of Prey took this plant in the middle activated, and just as to run down the clock a little bit, to be perfectly honest, because there's nothing that this plant was in range to do, unfortunately, and there's no cards in the Birds of Prey hand they want to cycle through or play or get rid of, basically. So nothing done really at all in that activation. They're just trying to tease out more of the Two-Face crew's activations, to be perfectly honest. We move from there to Tommy. For the Two-Face crew, he was originally over here. He was inspired by Two-Face because Two-Face had moved closer to him, gave him an extra manipulate action over and above his 1 normal action. What happened was, before anything else, Kill Them Twice came out of the hand as a resource. It enabled, for 1 point, it enabled the Two-Face crew to move back to the good side of the coin as opposed to the twisted side, for the purposes of them scoring objectives. That's just more pragmatic from looking at what's in their hand at the moment, trust me. Having done so, he then moved to be in contact with this sewer marker, and then used his manipulate action to teleport, so to speak, all the way over here. Okay, he is quite sick and tired of Poison Ivy there hypnotizing him, or potentially hypnotizing him, and after this turn he'll be able to use his Tommy gun again, and he doesn't want to be in hypnotized range when that happens. Having done all that, Kill Them Twice was played as an objective from the hand. It will score at the end of the turn. We've seen it before this game. Oh, wrong one, sorry. 2 faces of the coin, not Kill Them Twice. I'm stupid. Picking up the wrong cards in front of me. Good side. Easy enough. Have an even number of suspects in play at the end of the turn. If they do, 2 points to be scored. So yes, nice easy one there. Maybe. Well, easy to keep track of, if not to actually score. There's still some activations left for the Birds of Prey. In fact, I think it's just Kite Man, so we'll move to him now. Yes, and there's the man himself, taking the last activation, as I said. He, first of all, he had audacity, so he put down. He first of all placed a suspect marker up on top of the roof here where he was. He then activated his grapple gun to move with the benefit of his kite all the way down to here. Say, I'm just going to zoom out. Sorry, there we go. And then finally, for 2 resource points, so not a small investment, I worked best alone. Came out to put him an extra 4 inches to put him right back in the corner here. Okay, so he is in the back corner of the Two-Face's deployment zone, and as an objective card, the nest came out from the Birds of Prey. It's have more during the recount phase. They'll score. Basically, they'll score at the end if during the recount phase they have more models inside enemy deployment zone than their opponents. So yes, this will help them. You know, it'll either drag an enemy model backwards or it'll score 3 points. Either way, he's also still holding the loot, so it's in his interest to be well protected. So he is there pretty much. We'll see though. Anyway, it's good disruption there from Kite Man. He's a cheap model, and if he can do stuff like this, then that's all in his favour. And to round the turn's festivities off, Spice activated for the Two-Face crew, and she had chances to act in her own interest, or in the interest of her boss anyway, by completing objectives and stuff, but overall the weight of needing to deal with the Kite Man menace came to the fore, so she moved backwards into the deployment zone to deny the nest, as was played just a minute ago, and then she pulled her small Derringer out and she shot at Kite Man, and unfortunately she hit with both of her attacks, and well, he has only got 4 endurance, something I only just spotted when I put the counters down, and so Kite Man unfortunately bites the dust, and possibly more critically, that means that this piece of loot is put on the board in his place, so that's not scoring. It could still be picked up in the last turn, but yes, that's a good victory point denying move from Spice there. Okay, let's move to the recount phase of turn number 3. Right, the end of turn 3 Lumeth, shall we say. In terms of cards which were scored, we know that the nest does not now. Sorry, bring that into focus. Because of Spice's actions in the back corner there. Kite Man, hell no. In terms of cards scored though, Two Faces of the coin does come off there for the Two-Face crew, because he does have 2. So I get that into focus. There we are. 2 friendly suspects in play, so that's an even number, so that counts. And finally, after many turns of trying, the cat markers did actually come up trumps for Catwoman, so I work best alone scores. There's the text, lot of it there if you want to pause, but basically she rolled a 5, and if you remember, that was the numerical counter on that one there. It matches, so yeah, 2 points there for the Birds of Prey as well. Lovely jubbly. Right, I think that's it. A little bit, 1 point of stun damage came off of every model that had some, and we're ready to move on to the last turn. See, you can scrabble for those last few points. There's more models on the board for both crews than is customary, maybe, for my games. But we'll see who can actually score the cards, shall we? Lots to play for. Okay, the first 2 phases for the last turn have both been concluded now. In terms of cards played, I can reveal that Overwhelming Charisma, Kite Man's signature card, has come out of the Birds of Prey's hand. Basically, here's the text. It's played now and scored at the end of the turn. Birds of Prey chose where is it? This flower here. The shooting one is off the board to be their nominated model, and also chose the Spice as the representative from the Two-Face crew. If this flower reveals more suspect markers in the course of this last turn than Spice does over here, then that will score the lovely 3 points for Birds of Prey. So that's that. I'm not sure if they'll do it, but there's a possibility. No cards otherwise played from either side's hand. In terms of the initiative, I can show you that the Two-Face crew definitely has the initiative this last turn. Okay, and in terms of audacity markers, the Birds of Prey have given one to Catwoman, Poison Ivy, and these 2 plants which are on the board, simply because they're on the board. It doesn't, like I said before, there's very little chance of them actually getting to use that, but you know, they've got to give audacity out. I don't think you can choose not to. And also on the Two-Face side, it's each of the gangsters, so Tommy and Wallace. You've got Two-Face who has it, and Spice. Opted not to give any to Sugar. She can't shoot, she's got no ammunition left, and she's not that good in combat, so figured there wasn't going to be much for her to do in this last turn. Watch me eat my words. Okay, let's move on. Let's get these last turn's activations out and see who can tease out those last few victory points. Okay, Tommy took the lead for the Two-Face crew and everyone this turn. What he did is to, first of all, from over here, he shot at the plant, and as you can see, even with the cover, he did a fair amount of damage to the plant, which was enough to kill it. What he did also was to play as a resource heads from the hand. What that does is, because it's a good side, the good side is face up, he manages to place a suspect marker in contact with the plant when he shot at it, and as you can see, it's just there. Wrong way round, of course, because I put it the wrong way round. Clever me. Oh well. Having done that, Tommy then moved into the park just there. Okay, so that concludes his activation. I think that does conclude his activation for now. Yes. Moving on to Birds of Prey. Catwoman leapt into action for the Poisoned Ivy crew, and she ran up and she has taken control of that loot there to re-establish the hold on the 3 victory points for valuable commodities. She then put down a suspect marker as well, just for fun really. Another one, let's get the 3 cat markers out because she can, and yeah, that's a pretty useful one. Also noticing the Birds of Prey managed to notice that because there's now a enemy crew member in their deployment zone, and there wasn't one before they started moving this turn, the nest can now actually have its easier scoring criteria come up. You have 1 or more models inside an enemy deployment zone during the recount phase. That's easier than having more models inside an enemy deployment zone than your opponent. So yes, you know, that's much easier, because now just Catwoman on her own will be able to score that, even if Spice is still there, unlike last turn. So yes, and having done that, they then decided to play it as well. So yeah, that one is now active and ongoing. Okay, so yes, a pretty potentially good turn there for the Birds of Prey. We'll see if it bears any fruit at the end of the turn. Wallace activated and much soul searching was done, trust me, on my part, as to what would be the best way to proceed, since Poison Ivy, a hugely influential model, I think we'll all agree, is left there on 1 point of damage, and could have been good to get rid of her, but points have to be scored, and the only way they were going to do that was to move him. He took a lot of innovating to get there, because he managed to clear it all off in the previous turn, and yes, he managed to put down a suspect marker, which enables him in turn to play 2 Make This Better from the Two-Face crew's hand. Yeah, place down that suspect marker next to Catwoman, and yes, there's already a suspect marker within 4 inches of Poison Ivy, so 2 points there for Two-Face. But yes, will I regret that? Who knows? Let's find out. Remember what I was saying about Poison Ivy being an influential model? Well, she really did just show why that was. She activated with Audacity, so first of all she used one of her 2 special actions to activate Two-Face. Activate Two-Face to hypnotise Two-Face. Sorry, that's what that little bit of effort is there for, sorry. Yes, Two-Face then had, so because he was successfully hypnotised, Two-Face then took 2 actions out of turn. First of all, moved to the top of the hostess truck and then used his Tommy gun, which he just reloaded, to unfortunately kill Spice. Yes, despite losing 2 of the 4 dice he'd get to roll, both of the other 2 came up hits and finished her off. Unfortunately, she was quite damaged from before, so yeah, that's disappointing. The next thing that Poison Ivy did was to use her tactical action to put down a suspect marker. In so doing, which would have been in that little gap there between her and the plant. In so doing, she played in position as an objective from the hand for 2 victory points. Friendly model places a suspect within 4 inches of an enemy model, which she just did, and they already had at least 3 friendly suspect markers in play. Well, the Birds of Prey certainly have plenty of suspect markers around. I mean, there's these 2 cats for a start, and the other cat over there, as well as a bunch around the board. So yes, 2 points scored for the Birds of Prey. And then next thing up, the suspect marker was transformed into this plant here. Okay, that's why it's on the board and the suspect marker is not. So yes, plant's still erupting from the ground wherever she goes. And finally, she used her second. Yes, I was about to say she used her second special action to activate Green Kiss or whatever it is. I can't remember. The one that gives her instant death on her close combat attacks, and then she actually attacked Sugar, but I've just realised that she couldn't do that because she placed a suspect marker. In the end, she didn't actually do anything apart from one hit on the Flapper Girl, so I'm going to discount that hit, and she didn't move either. I'm just going to count her turn as having ended there. We're in the last turn, there's very little for anyone to do anyway, and yeah, that'll do for that, I think. Yeah, sorry about that, guys, a little faux pas on my part there, but it won't come to anything, I've just explained it. Thankfully I noticed it whilst I was recording, not in editing afterwards. Sugar activated next, and she didn't have Audacity, unfortunately, so she just contented herself with putting down the suspect marker, which was next to her. Okay, that concludes her activation. There's really not much left to do, but there's a few cards left on both sides which could potentially come to something, so we'll see what happens. This plant activated for the Birds of Prey and did one thing, decided it was going to take out this suspect marker that was up here from Two-Face side, so it revealed that, which will secure quite comfortably overwhelming charisma as was played in phase 1 of this turn, because this plant has taken up a suspect marker, and Spice can no longer do so because she's dead. Hurrah. Okay, that concludes. That's actually going to conclude all the Birds of Prey actions. I'm just going to work out what the Two-Face crew is going to do for the end of it. There's literally nothing left that the Birds of Prey can do, okay, in terms of scoring cards or even attacking people. They've only got plants left, so we're going to move back just to Two-Face and I'll round them up, okay? Okay, well, Two-Face activated and he was rather angry. He hopped down off of the hostess truck and into combat with both Poison Ivy and the plant. He can just about fit in between the both of them, and yes, he attacked both. First of all, though, he played as a resource from the hand, kill them twice, in order to flip the side of the coin for scoring objective cards purposes back to the twisted side. Having done that, he then attacked. He put one of his dice on Poison Ivy and the rest all on the plant. The result was nothing to Poison Ivy, fairly obviously, but yes, the plant is actually been smashed into pulp again. A bad day to be plants, really, but Ivy's getting good use out of them. Nonetheless, so that plant is now gone. In terms of cards, he then actually managed to play Spice It a Little from the hand. It will score at the end of the turn apparently, but a friendly model performs attacking its 2 enemy models and inflicts damage on at least one of them. Well, he's just done that, so it will score at the end of the turn, but you know, it will score, so definitely, there's no two ways about that. I'm going to call it there. There is no more models that can really do anything, so we'll go to the recount phase, and I'm going to work out who scored what for in terms of the last few cards and whatnot, and then we'll move to the final count. Okay, see you in a bit. Right, the last turn's counting up is all done, and so I can confirm, as I just said, Spice It a Little does definitely score for Two-Face, so I'll pop that in his score pile for 3. In terms of Birds of Prey, heavy scoring for that one. For them, they managed to get the nest out because Catwoman is in their deployment zone, in the Two-Face deployment zone. No matter how many other people might be in there, this will then activate. For them, valuable commodities scores because Catwoman is holding them at the end of the game. It's even her picture on the card. Nice. And finally, overwhelming charisma, we established, does score 2 for 3 points because the plant took the suspect marker and Spice did not. So I'll add those into the scored piles. Both sides packing pretty hefty looking score piles, I have to say, and we'll come back to you in just a moment for the final count and final thoughts. Right, well, score pile in hand. Whose is it first? Oh, it's Two-Face's. Okay, so let's go with Two-Face. 2, 5, 7, 9, 11, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 25 points. A fine total, but will it be enough to beat the Birds of Prey, who got a hefty burst of speed at the end there? Okay, so 2, 3, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 15, 17, 20, 22, 24, 27, 30, 33. So 33 to 25, an 8-point lead in the end makes that a pretty comfortable, solid win by the Birds of Prey, although they did score 9 points in that last end phase, so that was more than the difference between the crews. So it's closer than you think maybe, but no, 8 points is 8 points. I was having a real struggling time with Two-Face there, a bit like the mirror opposite of what happened when he played the Joker in my other game report, where just each time he needed the cards to come up with the right face of the coin, twisted or good, they happened to do so. This time, as soon as I flipped the side of the coin I was scoring on, the wrong cards kept coming into his hand. It's not so. The more experienced you are in playing this game, the easier it is to sort of cycling your deck and whatnot, so you can actually mitigate the problems of this Two-Face Cruise deck, which on first hand do look pretty serious. That you can only score half the cards at any given time. But yeah, the more experienced you are, you can really mitigate that. But nonetheless, sometimes even with this knowledge and this ability, you get screwed over. That's fine. I mean, that's how Two-Face should be themed, if you ask me. I am much more a person for theme over pure perfect balance in all things. No war game is perfectly balanced, and if it says it is, it's either really boring, predictable, or just lying outright, because you can't predict it. Any game is open to dice rolls, and when you put cards in as well, it's open to cards, and theme adds its own little twists, and I'm very happy with how this game worked, to be honest. I think that 25 points could win other games, against other crews with this Two-Face gang as well. So yeah, and I suspect the Two-Face gang models actually get a bit of a buff anyway in terms of their stats and their damage output, just to make up for the fact that their deck's a little bit harder to handle than your average one. But yes, overall the Birds of Prey crew did really well. I'm really happy with how the plants were activated. I really like this new Catwoman. The model's great and the cat markers are fun, and yeah, she scored me a goodly amount of points too, I think, over the course of the game. Yeah, having portable suspect markers is quite useful. I think I used that to score some points as well. Really happy. Poison Ivy's a great model. Used her hypnosis ability pretty well, I think, this time around. You just can't ignore her, but then she can manufacture plants on the spot to act as bodyguards, so a tricky one. The Birds of Prey deck, though, you really need to make sure you build that one well. It's one of those decks where you can't just take the default deck. You've got to really think hard about which models are in your crew and who's going to be scoring them, who's going to be scoring the cards, when you construct the deck. But again, it's an experience thing. The more experienced you are with any given crew, the better, and that's just a thing with all games as well. I hope you enjoyed this game report. I'll stop waffling now. My name's Shieldwall100, and I really enjoyed this. Like I said, hope you enjoyed yourself. If there's anything I missed or anything you want to praise or criticise constructively, then please leave me a comment down below. Feed the YouTube algorithm. I hear it, if it doesn't get enough likes, it starts, offing virgins and stuff, and we ain't got many of those around here anymore. Okay, take care of yourselves, and goodbye.